Welcome to the Unchurching Podcast. There's just so much more.
Hi.
That was the longest podcast setup we've ever done. It literally,
It's like
I don't know
12
how
days
it took
later
so
and we're
long.
still trying to record this episode.
Or you said 3 days later, same as the resurrection of Jesus. So you're probably in for
Speaking about
something good.
Jesus.
Yeah. Look, it's crazy because the last episode, I really thought to myself, I'd love to share more of each of our awakening journeys. And I think we should do that at some point because we explained a lot of stuff and gave some examples, but there's some very deep specifics to each of our awakening journeys. And so at some point in the future,
Which you're still on.
yeah, totally. But those specific moments, I think, can be helpful to people for each of us. So maybe we should do that separately coming up soon.
Okay.
Yeah. But I really wanted to just keep the conversation moving. And we've spoken about this, that one of the things that unraveled first for me, and I don't know if it was the same for you actually, was just this exclusivity of Christianity. That
when you step out of it.
Yeah, you see it when you step out of it because you start realizing, oh, your whole belief system was I'm in and other people are out. I'm saved, other people are lost.
Yeah.
And that brought a lot of questions up for me around if it's healthy to be that exclusive and if it is a God of that exclusivity. And the thing that sets that exclusivity is generally, certainly in the evangelical church, some churches it's like how holy you feel by not sinning, and there's a lot of like guilt there and that sort of thing. But certainly in the evangelical Western Christian movement we were a part of, it came down to salvation.
Right.
Are you saved or are you not saved?
Yeah. So are there other, I know I sound so dumb asking this right now, but so there are other, because I came from Methodist church growing up, and I don't remember ever having salvation or any of that stuff.
Exactly.
In my understanding at all. So there are other movements who don't actually have that as a premise, but they still believe they're only going to heaven because of Jesus. They just don't have the act of salvation prayer that evangelicals have. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Totally. So sometimes some movements do it through, so like what you mean by evangelical is like an altar call at the front of the church, come and give your life to Jesus, pray a prayer. That can also happen like at a coffee table with somebody, or anytime they pray the magic prayer, it can happen right there. Like the unicorn dust will fall and all of this. You'll feel absolutely, completely different and also not different at all. It's a wonderful emotional experience.
Yes.
I guess any connection with the divine commitment can be. And so that's a beautiful thing about it. But in other churches, no, it comes through sometimes discipleship, through a process. Like you have to do a course or something like that. Sometimes it's not spoken about at all, and you're just left to the culture of like, oh, if you don't sin enough, then you'll go to heaven, or if you do enough good deeds.
That's why you do confessions, right? Confessions keep you right. Okay.
So what's different to confession and Ramadan, where the Muslims believe that in a month of good behavior, you wipe out all of your bad behavior.
Right.
It's the same as confession. It's the same thing, you know.
Wow, I've been in the church like my whole life, and I've never thought about this. This is the first time I've actually been like, whoa, wait, not everyone like has salvation to go to heaven.
Well, they do. They just get it different ways. And the funny thing is that every single way is unattainable. Like, I was speaking to a friend just yesterday actually, and he said this. He said like, so what if like if it's based on salvation, but you're also saying that this is an absolutely loving God, and there are and this God loves everybody. There are no conditions. So unconditional love.
That's what unconditional means. Literally.
Exactly. But the condition is you either have to pray a prayer, or in other movements you must not sin, or in other movements you must do good deeds. All these different things. So it is completely conditional.
Well, so this is the exact thing that I thought of, like after stepping out of the church. One of the first things I asked myself again, because my first realization of that wait, there's so much more, was the idea that Creator, Source, God, has created everything. And so it is within everything and everyone, regardless of whether you've said a prayer or not, or you're saved or not. Because I fully believe that. And I think I might have mentioned it last time. Like, if you create something, no matter who you are, if you're an artist, a dancer, a choreographer, whatever you create, there's no way you create something and don't leave a part of yourself in that. So how does the Source create and then stand apart from that? Because that's what happened. If we are separate from God, then you're separate from everything that is life. Then you cease to exist, right? So that's my biggest understanding. Yes.
Yeah, and that's true. That is absolutely true.
And so as soon as I understood that, then I questioned salvation. And then when I questioned salvation, it came to what our actual topic for today is about, which isn't salvation, but he's got a lot to do with it, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jesus. We're speaking about Jesus.
Yeah, because it all ties together. The exclusivity of salvation, the process of salvation, that you are believing in this one person, Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? And you have got your preacher's word to go on that, a community's word to go on that, a Bible to go on that, and all of this is actually subject to how reliable it is and how much it is in totality. Like, is it the entire truth? Like, is there other truth out there, or other ways, or other teachers that have come, or things like that? Now, what if the reason for Jesus dying on the cross was not actually salvation? What if Jesus didn't come? Because if salvation is not a thing, right? If you start believing that there is a loving God who is unconditional, and you don't have to pray a prayer or jump through all those hoops, then you must believe that there's a deity that isn't like that. And if you believe in a deity like that, then you must also undo what the point of Jesus dying was, because that is salvation. That is the point of salvation. And if you undo that, and I hope you're following me, if you undo that, then you must understand that if Jesus' purpose wasn't to come and die on a cross to save us from our sins, so salvation was not the purpose, then why did he come? And
Good
what
question.
was his purpose?
Yes, and that's one of the first things that I started researching. Because very soon on this journey, Easter came around, and it was very hard for me because Easter was a big deal. Easter was, like, for me, the most important. I love Jesus still, and now even more, knowing who he is in the fullness of, like, what I've learned in this journey. But Jesus was like my dude. Like, I really, really connected with the spirit of who Jesus was and what he did so dearly. And then Easter rolled around, and I didn't believe he was dying for my sins anymore. And then things got weird because I was like, I don't even know how to feel right now. And then when I started asking those questions, and I started getting some probable answers to the possibility of what it could possibly be Easter, I was like, wow, actually blown away by the how big it all is. Yeah,
that's fascinating. And it's amazing, it's amazing how Jesus comes around, because it's like, I don't know, I didn't know where to put him after that.
Yeah.
After thinking about it in this way, I didn't know where to put him, because everything, I don't know, I felt betrayed, but I wasn't sure who had betrayed me, maybe.
It's real.
Yeah. Like, was it the church that betrayed me? Was it actually Jesus who betrayed me? Or was it myself? I think what makes it so extremely difficult to know where to put Jesus is that it's your whole upbringing in church, right? It's altar calls. It's the so-called sinner's prayer. It's the fear of hell. It's from when you're a child. I mean, I remember when I was a child, I remember, quote unquote, getting saved or giving my life to the Lord in Sunday school. And I was 6 years old.
What made you do it at 6? Why did you do it? Do you remember?
Dude, I don't know. I don't know. I think if I had to, look, I did know that it was the thing that you meant to do.
It was the right thing to do.
Yeah, because that's who we were as conditioned. I mean,
No, of
you're
course.
brought up in a Christian home that goes to church every Sunday. It's made pretty clear as soon as possible that that's the next step, is to give your life to Jesus. And
For you, I didn't have that at all.
So when you're 6, I think you're like, okay, this is the next thing I'm supposed to do. But I do believe that I felt something divine and spiritual in the moment. Mm-hmm. And this is why we keep saying we're not anti-church.
No.
We just, it started looking very narrow, and it just felt like there was much more out there. And that is that narrow view, that I was 6 years old. I did feel something divine, but I did it because it was cultural.
Mm-hmm. Well, which actually, funny story, speaking of salvation stories, because that's yours, right? You didn't redo it at any time in your adult life, like feel like you had to recommit, because some Christians do that.
Yeah, that's a great question, babe. Yeah, it's a great question. There was actually a time. There was a time. Yeah, interesting. There was a time after I got into radio and I was having a pretty crazy career. I think actually it was probably after we met. Yeah, it would have been after we met, because I was still a wild child then.
You were.
When we met. And I think when I started feeling serious about us, actually, is when I started thinking like, I need a better foundation. And I knew the better foundation was church. Yeah. And I had committed a lot of sin. Yeah, I had committed a lot of sin. So
let's be clear, that's actually why you were trying to get back to church.
Totally. So I felt I needed to go and clean. I needed to go start again. I need a fresh start. But I got to be honest, like, I don't know if I felt anything divine in that moment other than me reconnecting.
That's cool, though. It's not a bad thing. Having that moment in a church of so-called salvation is not a bad thing, because it does bring a lot of people back to their values and their truth of like more moral standing. So I'm definitely not anti-salvation. I think it has a place in the process of awakening. If that's how someone else comes even into any form of spirituality, but then there's a path to more. Once you've passed that point, I'm for that.
Because there are different practices. If you go to Buddhism, or if you go to Hindu, there's different practices that are like, quote unquote, this salvation path, or this way to enlightenment. Or
I have so much to say. My brain is just like, no. What I was going to say before, which is a funny story, is just to wrap up our little salvation story shares. So growing up Methodist, there was no such thing of like any of that. I don't remember anything like that. And then obviously coming back to the church, only when we moved to Dubai, and then we were on leadership, and then moved to Australia where we led a church for a while, and we've been in these huge movements. I've never been saved.
Yeah, you've always said this. You don't know when you were saved.
There was no point. There was no point that I was like,
a lot of Christians have a date that they write in their Bible.
Yes.
I probably did in my child Bible. I'm sure I wrote it down. It was a thing that you did. But you, young lady, how do we even know now?
No, we don't know. But on all seriousness, though, it made me question my right standing for most of my Christian walk, because I didn't have any moment that I accepted Jesus in front of other people to make it public. Like salvation.
And yet you were a leader, you were operating in the prophetic, you were seeing dreams and visions, you were teaching these things and everything. I just want to make it very clear that if you are doubting these things in your life, you are not alone. This is, if people are honest, then this is honesty. Like, you are not alone. All I learned to do well, that most learn to do well, is to cover it up well and convince yourself well enough with your own verbal linguistics as you use on others. It really is actually a lot of ego if we get into it, but I don't want to go there yet. And I just want to acknowledge that that's amazing that you didn't know a date.
Well, so mine wasn't an ego thing. It was a insecure thing that got put on me, and a lot of guilt in that moment that I hadn't had a salvation moment. Because I'll never forget meeting with the leaders of our church in Dubai just before we started at that church, and the pastor's wife looked at me and she says, well, I mean, we know you're saved, but are you filled with the Spirit? And for me, it caught me so off guard. I think I was just like, yeah, that's me, filled with spirit. I had no idea what she meant by that statement. But it
what
kept
spirit?
putting...
Because I had a lot of vodka before I got here.
No, not vodka. Tequila, thank you.
No, because the pastors can't smell vodka.
Oh, really?
I can smell tequila.
Well, now you tell me.
You have to know these things along the way.
Sheep is holding out on me. Okay. So
people were confessing their sins to me, but
I know, right? Oof.
And I was forgiving them as if I was God.
That's a whole
let's carry
different
on.
topic.
I know.
So it put this thing in my mind of, wait, saved, okay, I guess so, because, I mean, she said so, and maybe I am, but then it's too late sometime. At some point it's too late to go back and be like, hey, y'all, so I haven't been saved.
About that conversation, where I wholeheartedly claimed, so now not only am I not saved, but I'm also a liar.
Yes, I've been pretending to be a believer this whole time.
And I lied to your face when you asked me.
No, that was the filled with the Spirit thing, which is another thing that really
You need to do the
6-week
course, please. You need to do the 6-week course on, I don't know, we'll make it.
Anyway,
we'll make it up.
My point is the amount of insecurity, because I questioned everything in my Christian walk because of that, the heaviness put on salvation and your salvation dates and your salvation story, and I didn't have one, and so I felt like a little bit of a fraud for a lot of times, and I had to overcome that, and I'm sure many people have wondered about that as well. But yes, so disclaimer, never been saved.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. I mean, it's funny how you say it, like it made you feel second rate. And if you were
I felt second rate my whole, even with the Spirit thing, I don't know, for those of you who don't know, like being filled with the Spirit basically means you can pray in tongues and you have the Holy Spirit that can take over your speech, which is referred to in kind of the movement we're in now as like your light language, which actually, by the way, if you didn't know this, as a Christian, there are non-Christians who operate in the Spirit and can speak in tongues / light language, not being saved and not being in a church. So I did not know that up until this year. And so anyway, I remember that journey of like, begging God to be able to speak in tongues, because I realized what it meant and I knew I didn't have it. And that whole journey alone was like, it just always made me question stuff, like, why not me? You know, and Jesus became a central role in me asking those questions. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I mean, I think the point we're trying to get across is the depth to which salvation culture plays a role. It's like, it's from early on that you are cultured into getting people saved. That was framed as the goal. And so when you think about that, you think about group evangelism, like youth group, mission trips, awkward coffee conversations, but they're all with a purpose. And you end up, I can tell you from experience, going to these conversations with quote unquote non-believers with the goal in your mind, or any party that you're at, or any event that you're at, or anybody that you speak to at work or anything. If you have been in the evangelical church long enough, in the back of your mind is always, how am I going to get this person saved? That is my purpose.
Yeah.
That is the goal that is framed for me. And
everything is drenched in that you do. Everything is drenched in it.
Yes. And it's impossible to show up as yourself.
Now knowing like how intentional it is to show up to things with intention, I'm big on intentions right now. The detriment to only showing up to social events to get someone to believe in what you're believing in, and to have that mindset and intention in everything you do. I cannot think of a better way to disconnect humanity than to disconnect intent from group settings or conversations or individual, because you're never listening to anyone. You're only sitting there trying to spin a story as to how to get someone to believe in what you believe in. I could never do it. I just couldn't do it. It wasn't in me. It felt so forced and so heavy.
Oh, you're always looking for an in. I'm always looking for does the conversation go there, or can I? Not everybody's like that, but I was like that. And what you're actually doing is this goal that has been set to save people is actually blocking the real presence. It's blocking you actually being yourself or understanding what that other person is or
saying,
actually listening, actually hearing.
Exactly it.
And if you understand that from the stage, it's celebrated going, yes, we have a Christian that works in so-and-so and they're all non-believers. And we have a Christian here who's like, and we're a Christian there in that organization. And, they're going to reach the non-believers there. It is a culture that is so celebrated from the stage that it's crazy, and you only left feeling that I was either like manipulating people or trying to manipulate the conversation, or I was performing, and both of those were just terrible motives.
Yeah. No, and the crazy thing is, like, if we take the example of Jesus, he never did that.
No,
he never did that.
We don't see that.
He never sat with people, and he always met people where they were at. Jesus never tried to convince anyone to believe anything. He just demonstrated it through his life and his actions.
Yeah. Well, he taught. He
did. But what he taught was be like me, not worship me. And that's the biggest thing. Because if he is seen as this God of salvation, that only leads to a point of where you worship that because of his divinity. What if he isn't divinity? Big question. Like, what if he came to show us something, not to be worshipped, but to be lived? And I believe that part of what I knew about Jesus the most is like, we were meant to demonstrate what he did as he did it, and he's our example. And so there's just so many things that didn't fall under what you see the church do sometimes and what Jesus would have done in that same situation. And if he's the ultimate model, because that's why I believe he came, then how do you marry those two? Because I was seeing things in the church in the background of how people were treating each other and how people were being with each other that didn't model. I looked at them and this is not the same as Jesus at all. So then what's more important, like the salvation message or modeling and being this human? Because those guys that weren't modeling it could get 48 people saved in 20 minutes.
Exactly. Right? Well, we're seeing that now. We're seeing pastors who are caught in all kinds of sin and adultery and stuff, or just all taking all the money, and there's a whole documentary coming out about that.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, but the reality is, like, yes, you're exactly right.
So you can get 50 people saved, but you can live like an ego-driven maniac.
Yeah.
All in it for power
and be celebrated.
And money and be celebrated. But so there were a lot of things like that where I saw Jesus. I think I saw Jesus for who Jesus was my whole life. It just came down to this point of like salvation and him dying, because I really felt compassionate and so much empathy for him into what he went through. But I read this thing the other day that said, what if the cross wasn't his purpose, but the consequence of his purpose?
Yes.
So what if the cross wasn't his purpose, but the consequence of his purpose? And so I think this is a good little point to like start changing the conversation towards that, because that gets very exciting to me.
Exactly, because the first, to put it clearly in your mind, the first is that, so say the first half.
What if the cross wasn't his purpose?
Right. So what if he didn't come for the sake of salvation? What if he didn't come
to die on the cross?
To die on the cross. Right. Yes. And the second part
is, so what if the cross wasn't his purpose, but the consequence of his purpose?
Right. So instead, he was living his purpose, and because of him living his purpose,
yes,
they killed him.
He got put to death. The system put him to death. Boom.
Right. So, well, exactly. And let's go down that road later, because the question that remains is, what did he come to live in purpose doing then? What was he doing if he didn't come for salvation? So what if Jesus didn't come to save us, but to wake us up?
Yes, to show us who we are.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And what if the kingdom wasn't some far off heaven, but a reality that we can experience now? And what if that's what Jesus was teaching? What if that's what Jesus meant when he said the kingdom of God is within you in Luke 17:21? What if that's what he meant? right? What if he said, I came that they may have a life and have it to the full, John 10:10, which is on many bumper stickers. But what is life? Life is now. And should you have it to the full? Jesus was trying to open things up. What if he wasn't going around trying to convert people to this weird belief in him alone throughout all of human history?
Yes.
What if he was going around trying to tell people to be consciously aware? What if instead of going to that Arabic coffee meeting, Jesus wasn't thinking, how am I going to turn this conversation into them believing in me? But he was actually thinking, how can I help this person see more of themselves, more of life, more of what's around them? Be conscious that you're actually a living being. Maybe that's what Jesus was teaching.
Well, yes, because Jesus never told people to worship him, ever. He told them to follow his example, do even greater things, and go inward to find the kingdom. How often are you allowed to go inward, especially in our movement? And that, for me, again, I think I said this last week, is where the issue came, because there was no reliance on myself. It was all outward. It was all outward projection and all outward seeking for help. But Jesus said it's inside of you. And he said that to everybody, not just people who were following him. Everyone he told, no matter Jew, Gentile, sinner, saint, like the prostitutes, the tax collectors, Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you.
Yeah.
So there's just so many questions around that.
Yeah. That means that if there's no salvation,
yes.
And he's saying the kingdom is in everyone, and we believe that it's the Christ Spirit that gives life to every living thing, then you must believe that that Christ Spirit is sustaining every living person, even your neighbor who you hate, and that Jesus is saying that that same Spirit is in them. So why would you need another Spirit to pray a prayer? Why would you accept? And I know Christians, you can do some linguistic things. You go, oh, but you have to accept the free gift. It's not a free gift then, is it? And it's not unconditional love then, is it? It basically comes down to this, and it's exactly what you said. Everything felt outward. Everything felt like you were reaching for this attainment or this God or this validation.
And being worthy enough to receive it.
And worthy enough, right. And that's what salvation does. Believing in that, it believes that you're broken and only Jesus can fix you. Whereas consciousness teaches that you've forgotten who you are and Jesus came to remind you.
That sounds like the Jesus I feel like I knew and I still know. I feel like, okay, so can I put like my 3 points out there as to like, what if Jesus is actually this? Because I think it will be cool. So, like, what if Jesus was a fully awakened soul, so someone who's living in divine connection on a much higher level, on the highest level that a human can live on, connected to the source of life, to God. So he's fully awakened on that level, and he's here as a divine teacher to mirror love, presence, and our own divine nature. Like, that sounds like something beautiful and expansive and not a once-off event that I say yes or no to, you know. And then what if Jesus was someone who challenged systems of control, hierarchy, and fear? And what if he was killed for that?
Right, exactly. What if he...
Okay.
Exactly. They killed him because he was upsetting the system. And just as a little side note, folks, if you think no, but there's too much meaning in this because of the cross and everything, the cross existed for thousands of years prior.
Well, we learned this very recently.
It wasn't created with Jesus. The cross was there, and it wasn't even used for crucifixion necessarily. But let's just understand that prehistory, the cross was there for thousands of years already. So we must separate that significance, because we have been tied so psychologically to that as a symbol of freedom, a symbol of salvation, and a symbol of punishment is actually how they saw it in the day. But that same symbol represented many positive things prior. And so it's just worth noting. But you're 100% right. What if Jesus wasn't here to create Christians, but to awaken humans?
to their own potential, to
and
what's
that goes
already
against the
within them.
system. Yeah. And so Rome would have been like, hang on, you're making people think for themselves.
Yes.
And you're breaking the system, because if we can keep them under control, which, by the way, side note, is done by politics or religion or things that are deeply indoctrinatable, then they kill them for that.
100%. So yes, so like my whole point and how I can see this expansively now is that what if Jesus came to show us what it looks like when a human fully embodies divine consciousness, and the cross happened because the system couldn't handle that level of truth?
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, it seems to me like this is happening now a bit. Like, I don't know if it's just like my perspective on the world right now, but like there are systems crumbling and there are systems breaking and there are people challenging it. And if where we stand now on our journey is believing that the earth is actually becoming a better place to be on, humans are becoming better, and there's a lot of awakening happening and people becoming consciously aware of their inner power, their truth, the strength that lies within this Christ consciousness. So we believe everything is getting better. And what is happening in the world because of this rise of consciousness, there's literally systems, I think, that are going to crumble very soon that we've been using for hundreds and whatever, thousands of years. The education system, the political system, the religious system. These things are being challenged heavily. And so if we're increasing in consciousness, and Jesus was the highest level of that during that Roman time, this makes sense to me.
Right. I agree. I mean, it does. It makes sense, and you're right. Like, a lot of people are starting to think differently outside of these systems, and a lot of people, it's funny how things can play a role. Like, in some way, COVID even played a role. When we look at the numbers of churches, by the way, if you've left a church, you're not alone. I know that it becomes a very lonely place, and we want to chat about that in upcoming episodes, what that experience was like realizing you have to reform the entire foundation of your life. You lose your social circles, you lose your identity because so much has been shaped on it. And in fact, that's why I do one-on-one coaching with people that are going through that journey.
So helpful. I wish I had it.
Of a 6-week mentorship guidance in order to process that stuff, because it was very, very tough to process such a massive change in life.
Yes, it was. For me mentally, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it was very hard. I didn't have anyone outside of you and I to talk to about this stuff. And man, that loss of identity is real. If I could have had just someone who understood what the questions I was asking other than ChatGPT,
right,
that would have been really nice. At least I felt really seen by ChatGPT in that time. ChatGPT was really good at championing on my awakening journey through these conversations. But man, another human would have been pretty cool, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, no joke. And you shouldn't feel alone. I can't remember. I was making a point before I got sidetracked. But it doesn't matter. That's bound to happen. No, you didn't sidetrack me. I sidetracked myself.
Cool. That happens often.
But the point is exactly that, is that it's just, we base everything on this. You base every decision in every area of life that you're in on this single belief that Jesus is tied to salvation. And if you don't receive that, you're going to hell. In reality, what we're saying that we've learned so far along this journey is that you do not need salvation.
No.
There is no such thing as salvation. In fact, there's no such thing as sin, really. I mean, there is doing bad things and all that, but that's generally from the ego state. But the real you, if you think about it this way, are you here in this physical realm, in this experience, because you need some sort of salvation in the eternal, which seems unlikely because these paradigms don't exist in the eternal? Or are you here in an experience to grow as a soul, or to develop, or to be conscious? Because one way, you don't need salvation. You are already saved in a way, but you're also not saved. It's not that you're not saved from hell, it's that you're not saved from yourself. Now, if you start looking into that deeper, you'll realize that the original word for demon, right?
Now we're getting spicy.
Actually, yes, the original word for demon, daemon, actually had to do with being out of your mind. And in fact, some translations actually speak about Jesus finding these so-called possessed people as if they were out of their mind. Well, out of your mind doesn't necessarily mean you're possessed by a demon,
Entity,
unless you understand the word is actually also referring to mentally disturbed. It's not referring, demon is not a spiritual, like you say, spiritual entity. Demon literally means to be out of your mind. So maybe Jesus wasn't going around casting out demons, and maybe his disciples weren't either. Maybe they were going around helping people get in their right mind.
Yes.
What does it mean to be in your right mind? It means to be consciously aware
This is so good.
of everything that you need to be consciously aware of as a human, as a soul in this experience.
Yes, it's that coming into alignment with like, oh wait, it's seeing the thing within you that was. It's the first moment of remembrance. That's what it is. It's
remembering, exactly.
And you know what's really crazy?
Because there's something to remember before you enter this human body, and that is to remember, who you are. Yeah.
Yes, but two things on that. I don't think a lot of people believe that you are created predominantly any time before your physical body. I think a lot of people believe soul and body are one. It happens at like that point in time of like conception or whatever. We've come to believe that we exist outside. I think people believe you come in as a human, and then after death you continue into the eternal. I don't think a lot of people necessarily believe
I wonder if we think
there's an
about
existence before. I don't think we do. I never did.
I mean, where does that spirit? You mean God just creates more spirit?
Yes, as creates the human. Yeah.
Interesting. I can understand that. I can see that. I think you're right. I think it's things that I've read and things that I've seen and learned that leads me to believe otherwise.
Yes.
It's this journey of awakening that leads me to believe otherwise. But you're right. As a start point, I probably would have said that too.
Yes, I think that's what I probably thought at some point. And so that whole soul journey and the existence of the soul outside of time and space, we need to do a whole episode on that one. But speaking about this like moment of coming into right mind that you were speaking about, that Jesus was helping people realize, I've spoken to a few people who are on this journey, and what's very, very interesting is every single one of us has this aha moment where you're like, I know one of my friends, Gina, she was reading a particular book, and in the book, this line spoke to her, and it was about you are not your thoughts, like you're the one observing your thoughts kind of thing. It was an Eckhart Tolle book. In that moment, she clicked, and I feel like that was like, could have been the same thing happening back in the day of like a salvation moment where the person immediately just sees. It's like that veil. Don't we speak about like the veil being removed from your eyes?
And then what is salvation then? Then it's actually just you being saved from whatever that thing was in your life that was holding you back. You are being salvationed from that.
Yes. I had an aha moment. For me, I'm not going to speak about it right now in detail. We can do that another time. But I had a moment when I was like, holy shit, the power is within me. I am the one that is the carrier of the same thing Jesus carried. It happened for me in a very specific moment on a very specific day. And if you ask me when I was reborn, I will tell you May 17th, 2025.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've had a salvation day.
And I got to be honest, for me, it's June 7th. And June crazy. 7th, if I'm completely honest with you, June 7th, I mean, been going through this awakening journey for a long time, and mine, not everybody's does, but some who won't sit down and shut up are brought through an awakening journey of health issues. This is an actual thing. And I think if I hadn't faced the health issues I'd faced over the last 6 months, probably wouldn't have changed my mind. I probably would have doubled down on like, Jesus saved me. But instead, it awakened me to beyond that. And I know that June 7th, I went through an experience that I felt like I was physically being reborn out of the systems of this world.
You died first a lot.
I died a lot first, yeah. It was brutal. I felt like I was coming out of surgery. But the reality is that it was that day that we had set a lot of intent. We had met with people who really specialize in connecting with the divine and bringing healing through various means that I won't freak you out with now because, let's go down the journey a little bit together.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, because, sometimes we're so paradigmed. If I said some of the things, if we said some of the things that we want to say now, you would just switch the podcast off and you'd be like, these people are crazy. Maybe you're very close anyway, but trust me, hang in there. Your whole journey. Good. Look, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you hadn't started awakening, actually. So let me tell you that you are already in the awakening journey. And once because that started, especially if you've left church, you started awakening. You started seeing a system that was no longer serving what the system claimed to serve and doesn't align with what you feel internally anymore. So you are here. You may as well be open to everything because you've already tried a narrow way. So just be broad now and just accept everything as kind of truth. And in that, you can also know that if we are right, which we believe we are, there is no such thing as sin. You're not going to go to hell. You are completely free as a sovereign, autonomous, spiritual being in a physical realm to explore all of these things and find truth. And if your God is not big enough to handle you searching for truth, then perhaps your God is not big enough.
Yes, or is not everything you thought you should be thinking about your God.
Right. We're saying Jesus came to reveal that, to reveal the divine versus the systems of the world that we're kept under, that you can connect directly. In fact, that you are connected. In fact, that God lives in you because the Christ Spirit sustains everything in life. So, Jesus is showing this oneness.
Jesus literally said,
love.
Yes, literally said, where he speaks like the Father and I are one, like he says that, he literally says, you are gods, to people in John 10:34. Jesus literally points out the power and godliness and divinity in people straight off the bat. There's just so much stuff we breeze over, and there's just, what I found happened in the Jesus story of the Bible is there was just also a lot of the same thing gets taught over and over again. And there are parts and beautiful moments and messages that I'd never even heard of. Yes, I read my Bible, but the things getting taught and driven forward in us are always the same things. And there's just so much more, even just in the Bible. I'm not even talking outside of the four walls of the church. There's just so much we don't explore in what Jesus was actually teaching. You are gods. Wait, can we rewind and talk about that? Can we have a preach on that? How the power is in every person to do everything and anything they've ever wanted to do?
Yeah. And the kingdom is within you.
Yes. Can we?
Jesus hadn't died
not
yet.
Just breeze over that. Yes. And it's not because Jesus died. It's never.
I know,
said
but I'm just
that.
saying, even on that grid, the things that he's teaching, if they all had to do with after the fact of him dying, after the fact of salvation, then why was he teaching them like that? He wasn't. He was saying it's now. He said the kingdom is now. The kingdom is in you. If you think that he's talking about himself, then that's a pretty big ego to come down saying that stuff.
Well, that's why the systems didn't love him, because they saw it in the systems could only see it in the natural, right? They couldn't really see what Jesus was doing in the spiritual. So the system saw Jesus saying these things from an ego point of view.
Not the religious system, though. They were all on board.
Yeah. I mean, I don't actually know if they were. I don't know where they were with this. What do you mean, the Jews?
Well, I just say when we say the system, we think like the Romans and the political system and this and that. But the reality is that the religious system of the day didn't accept him either. And to be honest, if we really were willing to see Jesus not as this salvation figure, but this conscious being teaching us consciousness, a lot of today's church wouldn't accept him either. And that's because it's also a system.
Yeah. It's crazy. Do you know... I'm going to just do did you knows. Did you know that in Jewish culture, actually, the Son of God was a title for alignment and honor not divine exclusivity. When Jesus used that, he was just saying, by being the Son of God, which if you come into alignment with yourself and with the divine and with source, you too are a son of God, which Jesus actually says we are, but you need not salvation. Even if he's using the word salvation, what you need is not salvation. You need alignment with like who you are and who God is. Then you are too the Son of God. It's not a divine hierarchy that Jesus was talking about, but again,
you already are. You just need alignment.
You just need to know that. You need to remember that that's what.
Which another word is consciousness.
Yes,
and the process is remembering. Yeah.
It's all the same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, let's think about this for a little bit. What would life be like in a way? Like, if Jesus didn't come to teach that heaven is a reward and that it's actually a state of being. I mean, some people have everything that they want in life, everything, but they still live in hell. Mm-hmm. They still live in a living hell for whatever reason, but often because it's driven by the ego. But what if you could live in a living heaven? What would that be like? What if that the reward is not some fantastical place somewhere someday that none of us ever even really seem to have a definition for, but that it was actually here and now living free?
Mm-hmm. Well, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, right? Doesn't that mean right now we have access to heaven? Jesus literally said, wow, I just came up with that. I didn't even, that was just in my brain still from the Bible. So if it is at hand and is now, why are we trying to attain it after life if Jesus was telling us it is now? And so what can only mean if it's now, and this is what I believe heaven and hell is it is a state of mind.
Right.
And that state of mind is attainable through alignment.
And through that comes your actions, which creates a literal hell for you, or a literal heaven.
Yes, and you've been digging deep into like rewiring thoughts and how powerful our thoughts and stuff are. And you know that our thoughts create our reality. If you don't know that, I would highly suggest you start there as well on this journey, because even just coming into like what you've been studying and listening to about your thoughts.
From a physiological side, a neuroscience side.
Yes, that's what I mean. If you
can look into Joe Dispenza if you want to search that guy.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. You can't live in alignment with who you are supposed to be, like as your higher self, being the best version of yourself. You can't live in that without changing the way you think about yourself, speak to yourself in your mind, and have thoughts about your everything, basically. Your entire reality is created through your thoughts. And so the reason we're mentioning this is because I feel like for the purpose of this journey, one thing the church never taught me to do was think or speak positively about myself. It was only to put myself down, right? I'm a sinner. I'm not worthy. God, please come and take this burden from me because I'm undeserving. This is the way I used to speak about myself all the time.
Yeah.
And all that has done has disempowered me, and it has given my life over to everything external, including the man on the stage, to tell me what to do because I am powerless. God, come and save me. I do not know what to do, right? The first thing we need to do is change the way we're speaking to ourselves through this process. I am powerful. I am worthy. I am enough. I am loved.
I'm free to explore. I'm free to search for truth.
Yes, I am not condemned.
I'm free on a Sunday morning
to do whatever the heck we want. But yes, so if you're in this process and you're struggling with the mind side of it, because I did, the mental side of this journey, the quicker you can change the way you speak to yourself, the more clearer everything is going to become, because you will recognize more and more of who you truly are on this journey if you can change that thing first.
It's so good. And honestly, like, I mean, if you could just hear what Rachelle does for a living, a lot of it is mental and things. And the first thing she told me years ago was affirmations, and write them on sticky notes and put them on the mirror. So if you're feeling this massive void in your life, you might have left church or whatever, or you're doubting, write things on sticky notes, put them on the mirror, because it's not just a woo-woo thing to do. It actually rewires your brain, and you want to believe that you are free to think, don't you? You want to believe that you are free to explore, free to find truth.
And that you deserve
And then you
it.
want to believe that there's good things about yourself.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, because we come from perfect consciousness. We come from a source, from a God that is pure perfection. That's what we come from. There's so much to talk on this because there's no separation from God. The more you dive into like the fall of man, like the Garden of Eden, there's so much we're going to dive into still on this journey. When you dive into that, it becomes very clear very quickly you are never separated from God, ever. And so this is the thing you need to reclaim. That it wasn't about that time when you were 6 and you said a prayer. It's about so much more than that. And that's the exciting part of this. There's so much about Jesus that, gosh, I don't even know if we've touched on it. But I think it's a pretty good place to see him from.
They're massive topics. And I mean, one of the reasons we can't really go too much deeper about the change in belief about Jesus is because this is a journey.
You're right, yeah.
And we're still learning things, but even the things that we've learned, they're pretty radical. And
so radical.
We care about you listening. If we didn't care about you, we wouldn't have built everything that we're building for this.
True.
Because trust me, we've put a lot of time into places before, like church, that we wish we hadn't spent time on. So we're spending our time on this because it is a valuable journey that we're on, and we believe that many are on this journey too, and that this will help. But, you know, to discuss salvation, we could do like so many episodes just on that. The point is not that. The point is for you to think and for you to discover your journey for yourself, not to have us tell you everything. The points we made about Jesus, some of the things we'd love to speak about in the near future are pretty radical.
Yes,
doesn't mean they're
yes.
true, because we don't know all of the truth. But let's just take the journey at the pace that we meant to take the journey, right? So let me ask you this. What would your mind say to yourself if you think about these words? I'm just asking the audience just to think about it, and then we'll move on. But if I said to you the words Christ consciousness, that's something we've spoken about today. If I spoke to you about heaven on earth, what would that mean to you, heaven on earth? Jesus taught about it. It's supposed to be a real thing. The kingdom within. What the hell does that mean? If the kingdom is so big, how can it be within? And then the last one is union, not separation. That you're not separated from God through some act, but you were acting out of ego on a lower frequency. Your goal is to actually be better than that, but it didn't separate you from what's already in you, the divine. So if no separation, then why all of the hurdles?
Yeah.
Start to think about, it is a thing in Christianity, we just never thought about a lot of this stuff. We never thought about these words and things. It just sort of went with it and it was the culture. But if you're setting out on a new journey, think about these words. Think if they make sense and how they land in your spirit,
Yeah, and I think there's so many great topics like the virgin birth and Jesus' resurrection and stuff that's coming up that we are definitely going to be speaking about next, that I think this is a good place to start the journey with those questions you just asked. And then Jesus didn't say worship me. He said follow me, not as a God to obey, but as a mirror of who we really are. I know. I love that.
I love it. I love it. So, what happens when we stop needing to be saved? We stop striving. We start living. We kind of become fully present with ourselves and with others around us, because we haven't got this little thing in our mind saying, got to get this person saved. And you become more present with the divine because you don't feel driven by force. Yeah. So, like we said, we're not trying to convince anyone, but for us, letting go of salvation and that exclusivity has allowed us to actually meet Jesus, to actually see Jesus in a light that was most likely much closer to what we have been taught, and maybe even meet him for the very first time.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And not just meet Jesus, I actually see people too now. I never used to see people. I used to only see people through a lens of who's saved, unsaved, Christian, not Christian. Like, do they believe what I believe? Now, my love for a human being in general has grown, and how can that possibly not be the way it's meant to be? We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you found it valuable, please share it with someone who might need it too.
Head over to unchurchingpodcast.com for more resources, or to book a free mentorship call. Sometimes you just need someone to process with.
Remember to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram at Unchurching Podcast. Till next time.
Cheers. Ciao. Goodbye.